I still remember how my hands shook that night when I reached for the phone. It wasn't excitement or hope. It was fear, sharp and immediate, the kind that makes an old man feel the weight of his age all at once. My chest had tightened in a way I didn't like, and I thought hearing my daughter's voice might steady me. So I called her, once, then again, and again. Each ring cut through the living room, like a reminder that I was alone, sitting in the dim light of a lamp that hummed louder than the silence in my house. The call went to voicemail, then voicemail again. On the third try, her inbox was full. No space left for even a few seconds of my voice. I sent a text, "Call me when you can." Then another, "It's important." And then, when the pressure in my chest grew sharper, "Please, I need to talk to you." None were read, not even opened. I waited, staring at the phone, watching the screen stay dark. I should have stopped there, but desperation does strange things to a man who once believed family meant something. So I opened my laptop. I went to her social media page, though I told myself I wouldn't do that anymore. The first thing I saw was a story she'd posted 10 minutes earlier, laughing with friends at some bar, holding a drink, face glowing under neon lights. She wasn't busy. She wasn't sleeping. She wasn't out of reach. She just wasn't answering me. A strange numbness settled over me, spreading slow and cold through my chest. I thought maybe she didn't see my calls. Maybe the noise drowned them out. But then I heard her voice, clear as day, because she was on a video call with someone, standing outside the bar where the music faded into the night. The door was propped open, and her voice carried out into the street where I had just stepped out of my car. "I don't deal with him anymore," she said, laughing softly. I moved on from all that. He's not part of my life. My breath left me in one long, shaking exhale. Moved on from all that was me. I lowered myself onto the curb because my legs didn't feel steady. My own daughter, my only child, said it like cutting me out was nothing more than deleting an old email, like I was a chapter she had already read and forgotten. I didn't speak to her. I didn't interrupt. I just listened, because the truth sometimes arrives without permission. And the truth was simple. She didn't want me. Not in her life, not in her stories, not even in her memories. When she walked back inside, I stayed still, trying to understand when everything had gone wrong. I had no answer. Only the sound of cars passing by and the slow realization that the distance between us wasn't new. It had been growing for years, quiet and steady, while I kept pretending it wasn't happening. Later that week, I found something in my mailbox that made it worse. A letter confirming a change in one of my accounts. Per authorized request, it said. But I hadn't made any request. And the signature on the form wasn't mine. It wasn't even close. The ground under my feet shifted then, because I realized something painful. She hadn't ignored me out of anger or busy schedules. She had ignored me because she already decided I wasn't necessary. Not emotionally, not socially, and maybe not legally. I sat alone in my kitchen that night, staring at the silent phone, asking myself a question no parent ever wants to ask. When did I stop being her father? And to anyone listening, have your calls ever gone unanswered by someone you raised? I spent so many years watching the street from the front window that the shape of every passing car became familiar. It wasn't something I planned. It just happened over time, as the house grew quieter and the days stretched longer. When my daughter was young, that same window used to glow whenever she came running home from school, her backpack bouncing behind her, her voice filling the hallway before she even reached the door. I held on to those memories because they reminded me of a time when I didn't have to wonder if she cared. I raised her with everything I had. I wasn't perfect, but I showed up. I cooked, I cleaned, I worked long hours just to make sure she could join every school trip she begged to attend. Back then, she used to lean her head on my shoulder during movie nights and ask questions about the world. She trusted me. She needed me. And I thought that bond would carry us through anything. But life doesn't keep its promises. Her mother's death changed something in her that I couldn't reach. It was sudden, and the shock of it cut through both of us, but we reacted differently. I tried to hold on to the routines that kept us steady. She pulled away, slowly at first, little things, like skipping dinner or staying longer at a friend's house. But it grew into something sharper. She didn't yell or fight. She just became distant, like she was tired of being around me. I remember the first time her voice carried a different tone. I had asked if she wanted to spend the weekend together, maybe go through some of her mother's old photos. She shrugged and said, "Dad, I have plans. You don't need me here all the time." The words weren't cruel, but the coldness in them stung. It was the kind of shift you feel before you understand it. Then came the excuses. I'm busy. I'll come next week. I'll call you later. Later never came. The weeks turned into months, and the months into years. I kept telling myself she'd settle, that grief worked differently for everyone. But the sadness in her eyes was replaced by annoyance, and I didn't know when that happened. I just woke up one day and realized she didn't look at me the same. Holidays became the clearest proof. We used to decorate the tree together, placing her mother's favorite ornament at the top. The first Christmas without her mother, my daughter stayed, with friends instead. The next year, she said she forgot. By the third year, she didn't bother explaining. I sat alone with the lights reflecting off the ornaments, wondering how the world inside my home had grown so hollow. Birthdays were no different. She'd promise to visit, then show up late or not at all. When she finally did come, it felt like she was in a hurry to leave. She would scroll through her phone while I talked, barely listening. Each small moment chipped at something inside me, though I pretended it didn't hurt as much as it did. She wasn't cruel outright. That's what made it painful. Indifference is quieter than anger, but it cuts deeper. It told me she had been drifting away long before I realized it. She found comfort in other places, with friends, with partners, with people who didn't remind her of the home she used to have. And as the distance grew, I learned how to wait by that front window. Not because I thought she'd walk through the door like she used to, but because a part of me couldn't let go of the hope that she might still remember the man who raised her. Those years built the foundation for everything that came later. The silence didn't start with the phone she ignored. It started right there, in the spaces she chose not to return to. The first time she called after months of silence, I felt something in me lift. I thought maybe she wanted to reconnect, that maybe the distance had scared her the same way it scared me. I answered before the second ring, trying to sound calm even though my heart was racing. But she didn't ask how I was, or if I'd been lonely, or if the house was too big for one man now. She went straight to the point. Dad, I need a little help, just for now. Her voice was tight, but not from emotion, from impatience. I told myself it didn't matter. She was reaching out. She needed me. That had to count for something. So I asked what was wrong. She said it was her rent, then her car, then a bill she forgot to pay. The story kept changing, but I didn't challenge it. I drove to her apartment with an envelope of cash, the kind of help I used to give when she was in college. She took it quickly, barely making eye contact, and said she'd pay me back. She never did. Weeks later, she called again. This time it was more money, and she sounded annoyed, almost like she expected me to say yes before she finished speaking. When I hesitated, she sighed loudly and said, "You know you owe me after everything I've been through." That line didn't make sense, but I didn't argue. I gave her what I could. I told myself she was still grieving, still trying to find her place in the world after losing her mother. I used every excuse I could think of to protect my heart from the truth. Her partner entered the picture around that time. I didn't know him well, but whenever I visited, he had a way of looking at me like I was an inconvenience. One day, when she stepped out of the room, he leaned back in his chair, crossed his arms, and said, "She deserves support. You know that, right? After everything she's suffered?" His tone wasn't respectful. It was expectant, like he thought I should feel guilty for even questioning my role in her life. I realized then that he encouraged these requests. Maybe he planted the idea in her mind that I owed her more than love or time, that I owed her financially. She started talking differently after he showed up, using phrases that sounded rehearsed. "It's the least you can do. You wouldn't let me struggle, would you? You're my father. This is your responsibility." Every time she asked, something inside me tightened. I felt used, but I still handed her the money because I feared losing whatever pieces of her I had left. The more I gave, the less she called. The pattern became painfully clear. I only mattered when her bank account was low. There was a moment, small but unforgettable, when she snapped at me because I told her I couldn't help that month. She said, "Wow, so much for a father." The words didn't come from sadness. They came from entitlement. She believed my wallet defined my worth, and each request chipped away at the bond that used to hold us together. Looking back, I see the quiet dread that formed during those months, the way my stomach dropped whenever my phone lit up with her name, the way I waited for the inevitable follow-up question after her short greetings. I knew what she wanted before she even spoke, and you know what hurts the most? She reached out only when she needed something. not when she missed me. So let me ask you something and answer honestly. Would you help a child who only called for money? The day she came over with the papers, she didn't bother pretending it was a social visit. She walked in with her purse tucked under her arm and a folder clamped in her hands, the same way someone carries something fragile or important. I knew something was off the moment she set it on the table without even asking how I'd been. Her partner stood behind her, leaning against the doorframe like he was waiting for a performance to start. She gave me a tight smile. Dad, I just need you to sign a few routine things. Nothing major. Routine things. She said it lightly, but the words felt heavy. I opened the folder, and the first page was covered in paragraphs of language I didn't understand. Lines about authorization, management rights, and transfer of interest. It didn't look like anything routine. It looked like something an attorney should explain, not a daughter. I read the first section twice, but the wording twisted itself around my understanding. My eyesight isn't what it used to be, and the print was small. I asked her what it meant. She laughed under her breath, not kindly, and said, Dad, you don't have to analyze everything. It's just to help me handle things if something ever happens to you. Her partner added, It's normal. Most people your age do this way earlier. His tone wasn't comforting. It was pushing, pressuring, like they had rehearsed it. I tried to stay calm. I asked for time to read it properly, maybe show it to someone who understood legal terms. That's when her whole expression shifted. The softness in her eyes disappeared. Her shoulders stiffened. Are you forgetting things again? She asked quietly. Because this is simple, Dad. Really simple. That word, forgetting, hit me with an entirely different kind of fear. It wasn't the worry of losing my memory. It was the fear of her using that worry against me. For a moment, I wasn't sure what scared me more, the possibility that she thought I was slipping, or the possibility that she wanted others to think it. I closed the folder. I'm not signing anything today. She stared at me like I had insulted her. Why do you always make things difficult? She snapped. Her partner stepped closer, arms crossed, jaw tight. I could feel the frustration radiating off both of them. I told her again that I needed time, that signing something I didn't understand wasn't smart. She rolled her eyes. It's not like you have that much to manage anyway. I'm trying to make things easier. For who? For me or for her? She snatched the folder off the table with a sharp motion. Fine, she said. Do whatever you want. But the tone didn't sound like defeat. It sounded like strategy, like she already had another plan. After they left, the house felt colder. I sat at the table wondering why the papers needed my immediate signature. Why she looked angry instead of concerned. Why she used the word forgetting in a way that felt rehearsed. Later that night, I searched the same page online. It wasn't routine at all. It was a form that would give her access to my accounts, my home, my decisions. She would have had control over everything if I had signed without understanding. That realization settled into my chest like a weight I couldn't lift. She wasn't preparing for my future. She was preparing to rewrite my present, to frame me as someone slipping, someone incapable, someone who needed her to take over. And that's when the fear turned into something clearer. She wasn't just drifting away from me. She was positioning herself to take everything I had built, quietly erasing me, one signature at a time. I never thought I would live long enough to hear my own daughter talk about my death like it was a scheduled event on her calendar. But that's what it felt like the day she came over, asking questions no child should ask while their parent is still alive, breathing, and trying to hold on to whatever dignity they have left. She didn't even pretend to ease into it. She looked around my living room with this calm, confident air, like everything inside it already belonged to her. Dad, she said, have you ever thought about updating your will? I mean, things change. Life changes. Life changes. She said it like my existence was a piece of paper she wanted to reorganize. I asked her why she was bringing it up now. She shrugged. Just planning ahead. You know, being responsible. Her tone wasn't responsible. It was expectant, assured, like she was checking the tracking number on a package and wondering when it would arrive. The longer she talked, the more uneasy I felt. She asked about my accounts, my insurance, the house value, even the old car in the garage. She smiled while asking, the way someone smiles when they're negotiating something they believe they already won. It wasn't curiosity. It was ownership disguised as conversation. I tried to change the subject. She didn't let me. Her partner wandered into the room, hands in his pockets, looking at my things with that same careless interest. He asked, So, does the house go to her automatically, or is there a process? Not if, But how? Not a question about my wishes, but about their expectations. I realized then that they weren't worried about my health. They were worried about their timeline. Later that afternoon, I overheard something I can't get out of my mind. They thought I'd gone upstairs, but I paused near the hallway when I heard my name. Her partner asked, "How long do we have to wait?" Seriously. And she answered, "Not long. He's slowing down. And once the will's sorted, we won't need him much longer." Those words hollowed me out. Not needed, not wanted, not a father, just an obstacle between them and what they believed they deserved. I sat on my bed for a long time after they left, staring at my hands, wondering when my life had become something other people felt entitled to. I pulled out my old will from the drawer. The pages were yellowed from time. I hadn't looked at them since her mother died. Back then, everything had been simple. Everything had felt safe. But reading it now, I felt exposed, vulnerable. I saw how outdated it was, how easy it would be for someone determined, someone cold enough to twist things around me without my knowledge. The fear wasn't just about money or property. It was about control. It was about the possibility that she could shape the last years of my life into something I didn't choose. I called an old friend the next day, Daniel, a retired lawyer who had helped me once after my wife passed. When I explained what happened, there was no hesitation in his voice. "You need to protect yourself," he said. "This isn't normal concern. It's entitlement. And entitlement becomes exploitation fast." We met in his office later that week. He reviewed everything carefully, asking quiet, serious questions. He didn't treat me like I was confused. He treated me like a man in danger of losing more than assets, losing autonomy, dignity, identity. By the time we finished, he looked me in the eye and said, "You're at risk. We need to secure your decisions before someone tries to make them for you." Walking out of his office, I felt heavier than when I walked in. But underneath that heaviness was something new, a thin, steady line of resolve. I realized I couldn't sit back and hope she would remember who I used to be. I had to protect what little legacy I had left, not for her, but for the man I still was. Because if I didn't take control now, she would take everything later. I didn't expect the truth to come from a man who had known me less than my own daughter did. Yet that morning, sitting across from Daniel at his office table, I learned more about her intentions than I had learned in the last 10 years. The room was quiet, except for the soft hum of his computer, and the blinds cast straight lines of light across a stack of papers he had printed for me. I thought they were just forms. They weren't. They were warnings. Daniel slid the first page toward me. "I need you to read how she described your relationship," he said. His tone was slow, steady, like he was trying to soften a blow he could not prevent. At the top of the page, under family status, she had checked a box next to one word, estranged. Seeing it in writing hit me harder than hearing her voice ignore my calls. She had declared me a stranger to justify stepping around my rights. I stared at that single line, my chest tightening with a hurt I didn't know how to name. Estranged, that was a legal term, but she had used it like a weapon. Daniel laid out the next document. "This part concerns me more," he said. I leaned closer. It was another form she had attempted to submit, an early petition for financial authority. In a small, cold paragraph, she claimed I was showing signs of cognitive decline. She wrote that I was forgetful, confused, and easily misled. Words she must have chosen with care, knowing how much damage they could do. My hands trembled as I read. She hadn't asked me about my memory. She hadn't spoken to my doctor. She had simply decided that claiming I was fading would speed her path to what she wanted. "She said this?" I whispered. "She wrote it," Daniel replied. "And once something is written and filed, it grows legs." He opened a folder from a financial institution I recognized. The bank had reached out to him after detecting suspicious activity on my accounts. Someone had tried to access my balances, not once, but 3 times. They had attempted to reset my online login, and when that failed, they tried calling the customer service line, claiming to be acting on my behalf. "Her partner made this call," Daniel said, pointing to a note the bank employee had logged. "He said he was helping you because you were not up to it anymore. Not up to it anymore." As if my entire life had become too heavy for me to hold. I wasn't confused. I wasn't slipping. I was alone, and they were preparing to take advantage of that. Daniel continued showing me each page, each attempt, each quiet plan she had put in motion without ever looking me in the eye. Emails, forms, drafts, every piece told the same story. This wasn't a moment of panic or misguided concern. It was a strategy, an organized attempt to weaken me before I even realized I needed to protect myself. He sat back and folded his hands. "You still have full legal authority," he said, "but you need to act now. Once someone claims cognitive decline, the system starts watching you differently. You must secure your will, your property, and your decision-making rights." The weight of everything he showed me settled in my chest like a stone. I wasn't imagining it. I wasn't overreacting. My daughter had written me out of her story long before she planned to write herself into my estate. I nodded slowly. "What do we do?" "We update your will today," he said. "We add protections she can't touch. And if you choose, one page can be removed, the one with her name." That last sentence struck me with a grief so deep, it almost stopped my breathing. Removing her name was never something I imagined doing. But she had already erased me first, on forms, on claims, on statements made behind my back. By the end of that afternoon, the documents were signed, the protective clauses were sealed. And in the drawer beside me, the will she thought she owned now held a missing page, one she would never see coming. The air in Daniel's conference room felt still, the kind of stillness that comes before something heavy is spoken aloud. I arrived early, wanting a moment to steady myself. I knew what was going to happen, but knowing didn't make it any easier. This wasn't revenge. It wasn't spite. It was the final boundary a father sets when love has been twisted into something unrecognizable. She walked in 10 minutes late, heels clicking across the floor like she owned the place. Her partner followed, carrying a confidence that didn't belong to someone who had earned anything. She barely glanced at me before taking her seat. "Let's make this quick," she muttered, as if my life's work was just a meeting she needed to get through before lunch. Daniel sat down, calm and professional. He folded his hands atop the leather-bound folder that held my will, the one I updated after seeing what she had written about me, the one with the missing page she would never expect. Her posture was relaxed, almost proud, like she was waiting to hear confirmation that her future was already paid for. She leaned back in her chair and said, "So, when do we talk numbers? I have plans, and I need to know what I'm working with." Her words struck me with a coldness that still surprises me. Not a single question about my health, not a single sign of hesitation or respect, just expectation. Daniel cleared his throat and began reading. His voice was steady, every word chosen and legal. He went through the opening acknowledgments, the definitions, the standard structure. She didn't listen to any of it. She looked at her partner and smirked, as if this all belonged to her already. Then Daniel reached the section she was waiting for. "The following individuals are named as beneficiaries." Her chin lifted. She pushed her hair back like she was preparing for applause. Daniel continued reading, listed 2 distant relatives and 1 charity that supported seniors living alone. She blinked once, confused, then frowned. She waited. He kept going. Her name never came. When he closed the folder, the room changed. She sat forward sharply, eyes wide and burning. "You skipped a page," she said, voice shaking. "My name is supposed to be there." Daniel replied calmly, "There is no page missing from this version." I could see her chest rising and falling, faster and faster. "What do you mean? I'm his only child. This doesn't make sense." I finally looked at her fully, letting her see the weight of everything she had done. "It makes sense to me," I said quietly. "You made it clear you didn't need me, and then you tried to take everything before I was gone." She slammed her hand against the table. "You're punishing me? Over what? Because I asked about my future?" Daniel spoke before I could. "You attempted to access accounts illegally. You filed forms claiming he was mentally declining. You declared him estranged to justify early control. The court has the documented attempts." Her face went pale, then red, then something colder. "You set me up," she whispered. "I protected myself," I answered, "after you stopped protecting our relationship." Her partner stood, muttering under his breath, telling her they didn't need this. She refused to look at me as she rose from her chair. Not a tear, not a flicker of remorse, only rage that the plan she built had collapsed in front of her. She pushed through the door so hard it shook. The sound echoed through the room long after she left. For a moment, the silence felt unbearable. Then it softened into something else. Not joy, not victory, just a painful release, like setting down a weight I had carried alone for years. Daniel placed the folder beside me. "You did what you had to do," he said. And for the first time in a long time, I believed him. After the will was read and the echo of the door she slammed finally faded, I stayed in the conference room for a long while. Not because I doubted my choice, but because endings never arrive as loudly as we expect. They settle in slowly, like dust after a house has been shaken. I sat there, hands folded, feeling the weight of everything that had led us here. Years of worry, years of trying, years of missing a daughter who had left long before she physically walked out. I thought about legacy, not the kind written in legal documents, but the kind built over late nights, helping with school projects, scraped knees, and every quiet moment a parent hopes their child will remember someday. I had carried those memories like proof that I mattered in her life. But the truth was much harder. She had stopped seeing me as a father long before I understood what was happening. Walking out of that room, expected to feel hollow. Instead, I felt something steadier, like a line had finally been drawn after years of blurred edges. My dignity didn't come from the money she didn't get. It came from understanding that my love had been real, even if hers had changed into something sharp and entitled. I could carry that truth without shame. Later that evening, I sat at the kitchen table with the updated will beside me. I traced the edge of the page she thought she would own, the one she believed had her future printed on it. Instead, that page was blank, where her name might have been. It wasn't blank out of spite. It was blank because some things are too damaged to preserve. A legacy should not reward cruelty. I didn't feel hatred. I thought I might, after everything she wrote about me, calling me estranged, claiming my mind was slipping, trying to take control before I was even gone. But hatred is heavy, and I was tired of carrying things that pulled me down. Justice had been served in the only way it could be. The law had recognized her choices, and now I had to recognize mine. I stepped outside and looked at the yard I used to mow while she played with her toys nearby. The tree she used to climb was still there, its branches thicker now, stronger. Time changes everything, even things we thought would stay the same. I realized I had a future too, one that didn't depend on being needed by someone who chose not to see me. People talk about forgiveness like it's a simple switch you flip, but it isn't. Forgiveness requires remorse, a door cracked open, a hand reaching back. She never reached, not once. And I finally accepted that some distances are not bridges waiting to be built. They're warnings, boundaries, quiet truths you learn to live with. But acceptance isn't the same as giving up. I still believe in the good I tried to teach her. I still believe in the father I tried to be. That part of my legacy will stay with me, even if she walked away from it. I can only hope that someday, long after the anger settles, she'll realize what she lost. Not the money, not the will, but the chance to know her father before time runs out. As I locked up for the night, I felt a quiet strength settle in my chest. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for a call that would never come or a visit that had been postponed into oblivion. I was choosing myself, my peace, my dignity. And now I ask you, the ones listening to my story, should a parent forgive a child who never once came back?